All the second stage tanks now pressurized. Astronauts report it feels good. T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal. 12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Like a furry torpedo to the jugular. This is Honey Badger Radio. Radio with bite.
Hello and welcome to HBR Talk 380 under the Humanitarian Initiative veil. I'm your host, Hannah Wallen, here with Nonsense Annihilator Lauren Brooks and the personification of perceptivity, Mike Stevenson.
Hello.
And we all, as always, we have the Doge in charge working in the background to make sure everything goes the way it should be. And tonight, we're still taking a break from UN Women because you can only put up with those bitches so much for so long at a time. Really, it's because USAIDs infections are scarier than UN Women.
But I hear you. I hear you can. I hear you can cure AIDS by wearing condoms.
Yes,
I did.
Yes, we need a U.S. condom to prevent the USAIDs infection from spreading any further throughout the world. It is becoming a massive epidemic, and unfortunately, so many people now have been affected by it that it's definitely much more of an issue than any other pandemic ever was.
We need a US IUD. Is that the right thing?
Yes. We need a US IUD. Yes, we will definitely not use IED here. It's even worse than talking about putting one of those in your uterus.
It's not an epidemic. It's an epic dumbass.
There we go. It's an epidemic. It's worse than the dipshit epidemic. It's the dipshit pandemic. But this actually is more serious than that, and you'll see why as I get into it. But before we get into that, as always, we got to do what we got to do, and I got to remind you that Honey Badger Radio dishes out a smorgasbord of thought-provoking discussions, including the bear we're poking tonight. And as experiences both recent and long past have demonstrated, the provoked thoughts are fighting back. They've made it clear that for people like us, relying on third-party payment platforms like Patreon to fund our work is treading on thin ice, or building our house in the path of a rapidly growing wildfire. In light of this, we strongly encourage our supporters to switch at least their support for us to feedthebadger.com, the most stable way to help us out. And if you want to tip us directly, instead of relying on any social media platforms tip jar, the link for that is feedthebadger.com/justthetip. And here we go. I see. I thought I had a super chat, but I actually just posted something for the live show in the super chat channel. That was brilliant. Anyway, so there you go. Feedthebadger.com/justthetip. And as always, the same risk applies to our social media platforms, which is why you should further provoke the thought police by tracking our thought-provoking discussions on honeybadgerbrigade.com, where you can find your way to all of our content, as well as a link to feedthebadger.com in the drop-down menu at the top of the page. Interestingly, the last actual super chat in our super chat channel on our Discord, where we see the super chats, or super chows, I should say, that you send through feedthebadger.com/justthetip, is about men being protectors of the family and how evil it is to undermine that. And this show tonight is going to be sort of a discussion about the undermining of men as social protectors of the country. Men, they get sent to war. They get sent out to fix the power lines. They get sent out to build new homes after a disaster. They get sent out to rescue people and flood and fire and blizzard and drought, and any disaster that traps people in a very dangerous situation, threatens people's lives, kills people, puts people in a situation where they've lost everything and they need shelter. Men are the ones that get sent out to do that. But as we had discussed, over and over again during HBR talks, discussions on suffrage, the history of an evolution of suffrage, not just women's suffrage, but voting rights altogether, and how voting rights evolved out of men's service to their country. So they're intrinsically connected. It's important for us to understand that the stewards of government, the people who are citizens, who are the stewards of what government may or may not do, to the citizens and for the citizens and so on, are men. It's when men get fed up with women trying to exploit government to do things that it shouldn't be doing, and men have to put their foot down. And that's what they did in this last election. They said no to a lot of things, and they said we need to tear down a bunch of essentially shit agencies and departments, and build things back up the way that they should be, or if there are things that just shouldn't be, not build them back up, just not have them. And one of those things was the giant money laundering system known as USAID. And this is something that we knew about, like, prior to the election to a degree. We knew about, the fact that there were government agencies and government departments that were essentially just there to launder money for politicians and non-government organizations, and the non-government organizations that politicians had invested in, the companies involved in the military-industrial complex, companies involved in the what I would call the charity industrial complex, where they have this entire organized system that involves government contractors, government employees, non-government organizations, networking between agencies and departments within the government, and networking with other governments in order to move American taxpayer dollars and money borrowed in the name of American taxpayers and future American taxpayers from middle-class people and producers of wealth in the United States to organizations outside the United States, and mostly to administrators of these organizations, not really to poor people in other countries. They're not really, they'll provide some services, but the majority of the funding, instead of going to help people who need food, need to learn how to farm, need assistance in obtaining things like maybe they need to have animals in order to be able to have a food supply, or something like that. Then instead of doing that, they're over there promoting abortion and gendered law and policy on intimate partner and sexual violence, withholding food from men by redirecting existing national systems that provide for the poor so that only women can access them, and then it's up to the women to distribute the food. Promoting circumcision, just like stuff that I don't think any poor person has ever gotten an extra meal put into their belly by getting circumcised. It doesn't work that way.
One of the most Orwellian misnomers in the English language is non-government organization. It's like non-profit organization. There's nothing more driven by the profit to its head honchos than a non-profit organization. And there's nothing more driven by government influence than a non-government organization.
Yeah. Well, one of the worst things is they have influence in the government. And so, for instance, Planned Parenthood is an NGO, right? They're supposed to be, they're funded by the government, but they're not supposed to be part of the government. But policy gets dictated by the interests, or has been dictated by the interests of Planned Parenthood. The National Education Association is a union. It is a non-government organization, but policy in government has been dictated by the National Education Association for decades in the education department. And USAID is supposed to be funding a whole shitload, a slew of non-government organizations that go out into other countries, and they're supposed to be doing charity work in these other countries. And they have had a huge effect on government policy with regard to like how we deal with these other countries. And it's been quite a scam for a long time. So last week, what we were looking at is these people are panicking because their DEI hiring is being taken away. And I'm going to go over that again really quick. We'll listen to, I think I need to back this up a couple of seconds because we were listening to it for a little bit before the show. But I want you to rehear one thing we played last week. Oops, I guess I can't just hit the space bar because it's not YouTube.
A large number of our awards immediately. So in that first week, we experienced a lot of threatening emails across the staff, a takeover of what was it, DEIA Truth at opm.gov, which was unusual to have centralized emails sent to all government staff. And then many staff who are under a particular hiring mechanism in that first week were immediately put on furlough or laid off. I am a part of that hiring mechanism.
So there she goes. She's talking about the overseers of DEI, like human resources, the human resources workers that were dedicated to ensuring that hiring was done through the diversity, equity, and inclusion model, or DEI, which I like to refer to as DIE instead, because when a business does it, and I've explained before that every nation is a corporation, and there is a degree to which it is important to recognize it as a business. So when a privately owned business from the private sector does this, it does result in problems due to not making talent, initiative, skill, and character their primary focus when they're hiring somebody, but instead making race, sex, and religion their primary foci. And that's really dangerous when you forget about those other things and you make these characteristics that don't really have anything to do with how well somebody does their job the primary focus. You promote people who are not necessarily the best fit for the job. You ignore if somebody else is more talented, more diligent, better worker, has more skill that's particularly needed in that area, and so on. If that individual is the wrong sex, race, religion, what have you, and you hire the person who is preferred in order to promote supposed diversity, which really means everyone but white men. everyone but straight, white, male Christians in particular.
It's another euphemism. Well, I was about to say it's another euphemism for communism, but every couple of years they find another euphemism for the same original thing for which communism was already a euphemism for, and it's pathetic, useless, mutant pig people trying to drag all the successful people down into their swamp with them.
Yeah. So, we need to combat oikophobia with oinkophobia.
Indeed.
That's my take on it. Like, get rid of that real fast. But the thing she was whining about was that she lost her DEI position. This DEI hire lost her DEI position, and she lost control over part of the company because of that, because she had control over part of the company, not only as a DEI hire, but as a person influential in bringing in more DEI hires. It's almost like bringing a virus into, well, it is, because it's the woke mind virus, into your corporation. And while, Gillette may have the choice to do that if they want to because of their company, the federal government is our company, we the people, and we didn't want that, and we voted against it. Primarily men voted against it. Right? If women had been the only people to vote in the last election, we'd be dealing with President Cacklebutt. I can't take the woman seriously. Thank God she didn't become president, because then we would have to take her seriously. But yeah, we would have been dealing with the Wicked Witch of the East. Like, I'll get you, my pretty. And geez. But if only men had voted, we would have had exactly the same result that we had. So that tells you something. And I think it's important for people to understand that what has gone on here. Every politician that gets elected makes changes in the government. They come up with new policy, they add, they subtract, they decide things should go a particular way. They work with Congress to pass new laws. All the things that Trump has done, every administrator that we have hired to be the CEO of our country as a people has done the same processes and procedures. So people who work in government have to be accustomed to the fact that every 4 to 8 years, anybody can come in and say, from now on, all this stuff that you've been putting on pink slips of paper, we're going to put them on green slips of paper for no particular reason, and I want it to start yesterday. They got to be ready for that. They got to be ready for, we're going to update all your computers. You're going to have to transfer your stuff, and we want it done within a week. And they got to be ready for this policy that the last administration said was vital to our country. We think actually it was damaging, and we're going to stop the policy, and we're going to do the reverse of it. Because that happens every time you go from Democrat to Republican and back in all positions all over the government. Not with everything, but with a lot of things. Right? And so this isn't new that somebody comes in and shakes up their tree. But this time when the people whose influence on who became the president that outweighed the opposite sex's influence were men instead of women, now everyone in government is panicking, and they're creating these alternative systems to talk about how they're going to undermine the current administration. If you ran a company, let's say you make 3-pronged widgets, and your new CEO comes in and discovers that 3-pronged widgets are no longer useful. Your company is like going to shit. You have your sales are tanked. Your consumers are very dissatisfied, and they're kind of threatening to abandon you. And you're going to end up losing the company. So, new CEO says, "All right, let's start by looking into what we should be doing for our consumers, since they are the whole reason we exist." And you discover that actually what consumers need is a four-pronged widget. Not a huge change, but it is a change. So he decides he's going to revamp everything. Your machines are going to be updated. The manufacturing process is going to be updated, and the company is going to become four-pronged widget sellers. And of course, your employees all go into a panic. We can't sell four-pronged widgets. That's morally wrong. We don't like four prongs. We want three prongs. Three prongs is what we've always done, and it's the way things ought to be. So they create an extracurricular chat that's not part of the company chat system, and talk about how they're going to work with another bunch of three-pronged widget companies to secretly undermine all of the changes your CEO is making, so that after your CEO has spent all of the money and time needed to update the machines and everything, they will still produce three-pronged widgets, and they will be sold as three-pronged widgets. But it'll look to the CEO like the company has been updated. Like, those employees would get fired, maybe prosecuted.
I know this is a metaphor, but it's been so long since a sort of three-pronged fork. At some point in history, forks all got changed to four prongs. All forks are four-pronged now. I do remember three-pronged forks. They were a thing in the 20th century, but now they're all... Sorry, yeah, like I say, I know it's a metaphor, but it just spun my brain off into a literal thing.
Yeah,
I wonder if the thing you just described really did happen in fork manufacturing.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
Well, and the employees of the USAID system, the USAIDs Infection Corporation, have done exactly that. They have forked the company, right? And they've gone behind the company's back to fork the company. They went and formed protests. I believe we were like right about somewhere in here, real close to like just having a minute left, and I'll play it. But they organized protests. They organized an international communications network with people who make it their business to undermine governments when they don't like the outcome of free elections. So these people are literally talking about undermining the results of a democratic election in the United States. What can they do to undermine your vote, to take away the result that you voted for? Just think about that. That is a soft coup.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even if they're just looking at how can they do this in their little area, which they may not be, that is a soft coup.
There were more signal groups stood up. Like I said, this is an agency of about 10 to 14,000 people within the US. We have about 50,000 people who are hired into the ecosystem of awards and grants that are contracted by USAID.
50,000 people in that system, and the system is focused on undermining the federal government. So this isn't a small conspiracy. We don't know how many of those 50,000 people are involved in this.
And so this community started really gathering in Signal, especially as we saw the disinformation about USAID coming out of X, as Elon Musk escalated attacks. In that second week after the administration, almost all of USAID staff was put on administrative leave, including our ethics lawyers, our HR, security. So this was really when Doge took over, closed our buildings. And that February 5th, we had our first large scale protest organized in which several congressional leaders stood up with us along with agency leadership.
I just want to remind this is a government agency, right, that protested against an executive decision by the president who has legal authority to make those decisions. When was the last time you heard about this? A protest that during any other president's rule that a government agency, the people of government agency protested in public, right, in front of buildings, in front of news media, and said, "You can't do this. We're in charge, and we say you're wrong." Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, she said the word. Does anyone hear her say the word? Is a Pee-wee's Playhouse moment. She said it. Disinformation.
Yeah.
We know what that means, don't we? Those bastards told the truth. And we can't be calling those truths lies because we know they're not lies. We know they're the truth. So we have to break out the magic word. Disinformation. Yeah. I can't believe they're still doing it. You fucking wore that word all the way out over the.
Yeah, but they believe in it.
Truth debacle. Yeah.
They'll use it with each other because they believe in it, and they don't understand that we don't. So they'll continue to use it because they think that it makes them sound right. But yeah, I will finish the last 5 seconds here. But I think this is that was basically what I wanted to show you on this one.
Many things have happened. I'll talk about that next. But we do.
Yeah. So they ended that. That's what I was thinking. But even Data Republican, had to actually point out and not just leave it for you to notice. She's talking about organizing George Soros-backed groups, 50501, and indivisible organize these protests. So this is, again, someone who doesn't really have a right to tell the people what to vote for, that doesn't have a right to control, just is maybe entitled to contribute along with other citizens. This is his opinion and that's their opinion and so on. Organized, funded, bussed people in for a protest by employees of a government agency against the executive authority of the administrative branch of the United States federal government for exercising his authority and running the country as he was voted in to do. Because men voted for him. Because men put him in office. They're mad. They're not mad just because things are being shaken up. The entire federal government bureaucracy, every organization has, or every department, every agency, every sub-agency has some part of it that is like USAID, where it's got funding, but not enough accountability for how that funding is used. And a lot of the funding goes to some industrial complex. Like, you've heard of the military industrial complex. This is the charitable organization, the Humanitarian Initiative Vale Industrial Complex, the HIV Industrial Complex, that they're organized around creating businesses and so-called nonprofit organizations to use government funding in other countries for the appearance, at least, of helping people. And they move quite a bit of money every year. Huge amounts of money. More money than you can picture in your mind. Annually. Without really accounting for any of it to the public. We don't get to hear this group, this company, this nonprofit organization did this much work in this country in Africa to make sure this many people got housing or food or whatever, that this money came from USAID. You never see that. There's not some publication that gets sent to your house. It's not on the news. It's not talked about very much at all. And instead, you're constantly seeing, don't ask questions about this. If you ask questions about this, it's because you hate poor people, or you hate black people, or you hate Muslims, or you hate this group or that group. That you are infected with the isms and the phobias. In the meantime, they're laundering money and ensuring that a bunch of people who aren't doing anything for anybody get very rich.
Yeah, the military-industrial complex is in danger of eventually realizing that they are the baddies, because they essentially have skulls on their hats, or the equivalent of it, because they're called the military-industrial complex. But the charity-industrial complex, they wear rainbows, dear C. We can't possibly be the bad guys if we're wearing rainbows and we call ourselves the good guys. Problem solved. We're not the baddies. We can never be the baddies. No one's ever going to see us as the baddies. So we can keep on acting exactly like the baddies and doing exactly what the baddies would do. And we'll never have that revelation. Looking over the guard tower at the people we're totally not oppressing. It's fine. Don't worry about it. And yeah, they're the moral busybodies who will forever rule over people with their conscience intact. Good times.
Well, see, I take a little bit of a different stance. I think that not only the military industrial complex, not only do they know that they are the baddies, they thrive off of being the baddies. They know what they're doing. And it's the wool that they're trying to pull over our eyes, not their own. They know what they're doing. And I think the same exact phenomena is happening with this charity industry. Because if they wanted reform, if anyone who actually worked in that type of business, that lane of business, if they actually wanted change, then change would happen. And it's just like what happens with us, right? Like, we want to see the change happen. Once the change happens, the need for us to exist goes away. And I think all of us here are fine with that. That's exactly what we want, right?
Yeah.
Which is why we are so in opposition to these people, because they have no intention on actually changing anything. They just want to exist so they can continue to get the money grab.
Yep. And in fact, it's if I were to look at, what would I be doing right now if I was not an MRA? My regular job, I'm a direct support professional for intellectually disabled adults, I would probably be focusing about 40 to 60 more hours a week on that job, on what can I do in that industry, both as an employee and a volunteer, that I'm not already doing. And it's not that this takes away from that and it's bad. This is very necessary. But if this stopped being necessary, I would just pivot to that, because there's always going to be people who are in need in that area.
Yes.
It's something more biological, not social necessarily. So, I think a lot of us have something like that in our lives.
I would hope so.
I don't think anyone knows they're the bad guys. I don't think anyone thinks they're the bad guys, except the occasional, like, total psychopath that is so out there that they eventually get arrested and then they go to trial and they stand up in front of the court and say, yeah, fuck it, I'm glad those children are dead. I would do it again. Those, they tend to be very isolated and they go to prison for their whole lives, and they are the only people who will even entertain the notion that they're the bad guys. I think this is the most sinister thing about humanity, that that we are driven by morality, and that is what drives people to be so evil. Evil people don't know they're evil for the most part, for the largest possible part. I mean, even the people with skulls on their heads, despite the meme, despite the sketch we've all seen, they never realized they were the bad guys. The fucking communists never realized they were the bad guys. The Nazis never realized that they were the bad guys. They did everything they did because they thought they were doing the right thing. And they were ruthless in their attempts to do what they thought was the right thing. But this is what's so counterintuitive, that evil is almost always born from people who think they're doing good. And this is why everything gets so fucked up, because when people think they have morality on their side, they have no reverse gear. And
Right.
and the further they get into that quagmire, the further they get into the sunken cost fallacy. Much like with circumcision, when you've mutilated your child's genitals, you can never go back on it. You can never admit that what you've done is the most evil thing you could possibly do. When you've attempted to subvert a nation by turning everyone gay, you were like, well, of course it's a good thing to turn an entire nation gay. That you can't possibly have negative consequences, because if you really could, stand outside yourself and look at things objectively, you would have to admit, oh shit, yeah, I destroyed a nation by subverting it. And it's never been more manifest than in this farce we call progressivism. That's why it's called progressivism. That's why we have to call it by. That's why they have to call it by a euphemism. Evil people always have to call it good. Like every dysphemism, every cacophonism has to be called a euphemism. Otherwise, they can't get people behind it. And like I say, they would just be left as isolated psychopaths doing their own thing individually. To get evil to be exacted by collective, it has to be disguised as a good thing. And this is what's so hard to get across to people, and this is why we're working so hard to get across to people, and this is why we're fighting such an uphill battle, because we're always fighting against people who will do this evil with their conscience intact.
There's a mechanism actually in the human brain that does this, right? Where if you want a reason to do something because you personally have some desire to do that thing, you rationalize and compartmentalize in order to reframe it as good. So, for instance, with the military-industrial complex, if they couldn't reframe what they're doing, then they would have to acknowledge that they are literally sacrificing the lives of young men, mostly men, young men all over the world, starting with our own country, but also anybody that we're battling against, for money. Like, they're essentially creating a human sausage factory into which young men are put at one end, like in a slaughterhouse, and at the other end, dollar bills are printed out. That is the essential nature of the military-industrial complex. if there isn't a military conflict in which young men's lives have to be sacrificed, either on our side or the other side or both, these people don't make money. If we have a stockpile of defensive tools and our stockpile is good enough because other nations are so afraid of it that they negotiate with us, or we have such a good relationship with other nations that they negotiate with us. Either way, doesn't matter. We already have these things, and we don't need to purchase more, and we don't need to pay for infrastructure to be transported to some other country and run around our military presence there in order to serve the needs of the soldiers that are there. Then these people don't make money. They lose their profit. And yeah, at least some people are old enough to recognize the reference. Thank you. Murder of Crows, Pink Floyd's The Wall. Yes. That is probably the most accurate description I've ever seen of how the military industrial complex works. It grinds up the lives of young men and some young women, but mostly young men, and spits out money. And there isn't something else. There's not a valid other excuse, right? They will say that it's for humanitarian reasons. It's under the humanitarian initiative veil too. But it's still grinding up young men, grinding them to death, or worse, grinding them into this situation of perpetual undeath wherein they're forever psychologically changed. They're not the same person anymore. But they still occupy the same body, and everyone around them expects them to be the person that went off to war and not the person who came back, and doesn't understand how to relate to the new person that came back with all of that set of experiences that changed him so much. And that for the rest of his life, then he has to remember those experiences, and he has to deal with that. And that's essentially all it is. Final Midnight points out the cigarette industry was making a cent or two per cigarette. At some point, they knew it was killing people, and they just wouldn't stop. Yeah, they had a wealth of evidence that what their product does is very unhealthy. There's a parallel, though. The sugar industry does the same thing.
And to tack on,
we demonize the cigarette industry, which I'm allergic to cigarettes, so I don't have any reason to like them. But the fact is, the processed sugar industry, both processed cane sugar and processed vegetable sugars, corn sugar and beet sugar, corn syrup and beet sugar, like all of those things do damage to the body and the brain. Sugar is bad for your brain.
Very.
And we don't demonize that industry, even though there are different ways that it is exactly as bad as cigarettes. They cause health problems that lead to heart attacks and strokes.
And Alzheimer's.
And Alzheimer's, yeah. You might survive, but just like that individual that comes back from war, an entirely different person, you might lose part of who you are. Instead of developing new aspects to who you are that completely change you, you lose big chunks of who you are, and you never get them back. And having had a family member who went through that with many strokes, it's happening. It's a horrifying experience, and there's nothing you can do about it once it starts. You might be able to slow it down, but it'll continue to happen. There's not a cure. There's only treatments. And those treatments are only necessary because the American public is addicted to sugar. And sugar is harder to quit than cigarettes.
How many seconds does a Twinkie take off your life? Is it more or less than 7? How many seconds off your life does one day in the education system take off your life?
Hey, I know a guy whose first heart attack was at the age of 34.
Jesus.
Right? And I used to know a guy whose first heart attack was at the age of 35, and I lost a brother-in-law to a heart attack at the age of 35. Like, we're not talking seconds, okay? We're talking years. Now, granted, I don't know how much each Twinkie might contribute or other factors might be involved there. But, I don't know very many people who died just because they smoked cigarettes at the age of 35 or 34 suddenly, right? There's only one other ingestible substance that is legal that I know that has done that to people. And it was encouraged by the medical field. So, but now granted, I do have family members that have gotten cancer when they were very young, but we have a genetic predisposition in my family. I don't think you can entirely blame that on cigarettes. Some people who don't smoke in my family still get that cancer. Everybody who smokes in my family gets that cancer. But there's no group of people in my family that has a magic bullet to not get it. So clearly smoking's not the main factor. It's the gene. Whereas with sugar, that affects the body pretty much regardless of your genes. It's unhealthy for everybody, regardless. And on the other side of my family, my grandfather smoked for 40 years, and he was over 90 years old before he finally got the one little grain of rice-sized tumor that eventually affects men if they get very old. And that was, he had a grain of rice-sized tumor in his prostate that was very treatable, and he went through very minor treatment, and it was gone. Right. And yeah, alcohol can be really, really bad as well. But I think more people overdo sugar than alcohol. And there's a genetic component to alcohol too. Like alcoholism, certain types of addiction do run in families. And I know that there is a gene for alcoholism. And I know at least 2 people that I have found out have that gene. So it's a rough situation. But you don't have to have a gene to be vulnerable to the effects of sugar, right? That's another one, an industrial complex. And the United States government propped up the sugar industry. I don't know if people know that.
No, absolutely. I mean, shit. If you go back far enough, doctors were fucking giving, maybe not advertisements, but saying that cigarettes were okay. There's nothing wrong
Yeah.
with them.
Yep. They used to, 4 out of 5 doctors prefer this one particular brand of cigarettes.
Yeah.
And, and they do the same thing with this many dentists prefer. It's always one less than out of total. One less than the total out of total number of dentists
Yeah.
recommend this or that brand. Like in what? What, a study? Or is this something that you just pulled those numbers out of your ass, didn't you? Don't touch me with those numbers. That's nasty.
Right.
But yeah, so these complexes do exist. There are numerous there's an education industrial complex where, if you don't need new school books periodically, including history books, even books that are specialized, like obviously you need new history books because history is being made every day. All right. History starts yesterday and the future starts in 5 minutes. And so, you do need those, but there's history courses that are just about the Civil War, or that are just about World War II, or that are just about the history of medicine up to the creation of this or that event, and so on. And that why would you need new books once the information is known? But they reprint those. They reprint new math books, new books on grammar, new literature books, so on. And if you don't need those, right? If your school doesn't need the new curriculum because the curriculum has not changed, and they don't need books with the updated version of this particular process or that particular grammar rule and so on, then they don't make money. And everybody thinks that, for instance, I can't think of what it's called now. Not the way that they're teaching now has a particular name for it, and it's essentially just, this is the formula for how you create your rubric, and how you organize what you're teaching in the classroom. And it allows teachers a certain degree of freedom in what they put in their lesson plans and so on. But it makes it more difficult for parents to understand what's being taught. And
bullshit. It's called bullshit.
No, it starts with a C, and I can't think of the name for it. And there was a whole big hullabaloo over it. Or Common Core. They call it Common Core. There's a whole big hullabaloo over Common Core. Thank you, Xerinx, for getting that into the chat. And actually, by the way, the comment about men protecting the family was also from Xerinx. So thank you for that too. Even though it was a previous show's chat, it was a neat way to introduce the talking. And yeah, social emotional learning is another thing. Social emotional, the understanding of someone's social emotional experience, like that side of what's going on with them, that's something that you use in, say, dealing with people with mental health conditions or intellectual disabilities in a medical situation. You may have somebody who has difficulty communicating, and so when they want to say, I don't want gravy on my mashed potatoes, I want butter, and you're putting gravy on their mashed potatoes, instead of saying no or stop, or giving you the hand signals for no and stop, the sign language for no or stop or anything like that, they pound on the table and yell. And if you are trying to encourage them to use their words and to communicate with hand signals, and to recognize that you can get them a different serving of mashed potatoes and give them their butter, and just, you don't have to worry about the other ones. That's social emotional learning, and it's supposed to be done in a therapeutic setting. When they start doing that in the classroom, what they're doing is trying to teach your child that they should doubt their identity. It's about changing behavior, and it's about changing behavior. It's supposed to be about changing behavior to help the person fit into their environment and interact functionally with their environment, instead of being at odds with it and having emotional outbursts and getting themselves into trouble. Well, when the teacher creates an environment in which you're not allowed to be yourself, and your what's normal for you, and what's normal as part of being a member of the human race is the rejected way of being, and you have to fit in by adopting a false personality disorder or a false gender identity or any other such thing, social emotional learning becomes a way of manipulating people instead of a way of helping people, because you're being forced to fit into a box instead of being encouraged to communicate your wants and needs in a way that people can understand and doesn't result in conflict.
See, when male teachers want to discipline students, they can do it in the same way fathers do.
Yeah.
They just give them the stink eye and raise their voice ever so slightly so that deep sound resonates around the room. But then they got rid of male teachers and, for the most part, male parents. And the leftover female teachers were like, well, shit, what do? We've got to bang on the fucking desk and maybe kick them a bit and maybe rape a few of them. That's the only way we can really discipline them. And, completely unravel their identity in the same way the military-industrial complex does to soldiers. Funny, isn't it?
Yep. So what we're dealing with here is one of many of these types of conflicts, and so it's or complexes. It's not just the military. It's not just the education system. It's not just the environmental system. I think I once told the story of how the EPA showed up on a farm in Ohio and protected a stray lamb to death, or not lamb, but a stray fawn to death. Like literally, they protected it to death. The farmer had this fawn that was invading his feed, so his cows were eating, and this fawn kept coming up and getting into the feed, and he couldn't stop it without hurting it. So he just gave up, and somebody called the EPA, and they showed up, and I guess the wildlife people showed up as well, and they ordered him to stop keeping this animal as a pet, which he was not doing, so he couldn't stop. You can't stop doing something that you're not doing. And, and he explained the situation to them. They didn't believe him, so they decided to take the fawn away from him and relocate it where it would be safe from him. And they chased it around all day, terrified the shit out of it. And when they finally caught it, they put it in a truck, got it loaded up, got ready to take it to someplace else. It had a heart attack and died. Literally protected it to death. Brilliant government. But like these agencies and organizations, their purpose is really primarily to make money for administrators of the industries, like the businesses and non-profit organizations and so on, that they fund to do jobs for them, and the administrators of the agencies and departments. That's pretty much it. They provide a way for politicians to get around the spoils system, which it used to be every time you got a new administration, you got a new bureaucracy that would flip back and forth, left and right, because they'd fire all the old employees and replace them with their supporters each time. And now they don't fire the old employees, they just grow the government bigger. And that's what we're dealing with here. So Data Republican goes on, Rotucci herself goes on to talk about bringing in international actors to assist with the color revolution, right? Against her own country, of which she's an employee through being an employee of the federal government, being part of the bureaucracy. She is literally talking about bringing foreign individuals into this discussion, into this organization, by to undermine the federal executive branch of the government.
Is happening. I think we're still in the figuring that out phase, but I do think 22nd Century will be a great place to build those connections. I know John Hopkins is also working to bridge international domestic democracy, conflict mitigation spaces. And to Hochul's point,
just a reminder, she just mentioned like a respected institution there, John Hopkins. So like unless she's talking about a guy who just coincidentally has the same name, that's bizarre to me in and of itself.
Yeah, actually just bringing in, like, we don't have to be intermediaries either. We can bring in actors or colleagues from around the world who have dealt with this directly, very specific issue sets.
So there she goes. She's talking about bringing in foreign actors with experience as part of color revolutions in their nations. In other words, overthrowing their governments to help with this.
It's blowing my mind a little bit because, when you brought up Data Republican a couple episodes ago, I was trying to remember where I remembered that name from. And the first instance was when Doge happened. And, as we all know, Doge was supposed to be the, Department of Governmental Efficiency, right? Breaking down the bullshit that's going on in the government so that we can, more effectively use the tax dollars that are being stolen from us. And and now that we know that she's a she, seemed to be very much on that side. So this feels very much like a switch has been flipped. What is this? What are you
This
talking
is somebody
about?
having their eyes open. Right?
Yeah.
This is somebody like going, whoa, holy fuck, what's going on with our government? This is insane.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's almost impossible to investigate like what the federal government does, what the bureaucracy of the federal government does, not what the Congress and president do, but what all the various departments and agencies do, without noticing a few things. Like, especially if you start getting into how money is spent and what it's being spent on, and how many departments, agencies, bureaus, sub-agencies, sub-departments, and so on there actually are in the federal government, and how many divisions each of those have, and so on. Just get on the website, usaspending.gov once, and do a search through all departments, all right, for spending on this is spelled RHESUS, rhesus monkeys.
Rhesus monkeys.
Yeah, they are used for research. They are used for scientific research. You will discover a rabbit hole of epic proportions. And that I went through this. The military buys a lot of them, but so do several other government agencies, none of which I would have expected to need to be doing research. They're used in research done on how chemical substances and microbes affect the human body. Right. So you have the military doing that kind of research.
Well, and again,
and then you have other agencies also doing that kind of research.
Yeah, no, the military industrial complex has been completely corrupted and turned inwards on itself towards the American people.
Yeah.
They are conducting experiments on us. Do you remember during COVID when there was that truck that got turned over and there were a bunch of monkeys that got loose?
Yep, yep. There's been a one recently too, and I mean there's been several instances that actually look like the start of the movie 12 Monkeys. um,
Yeah,
or Contagion. There's another one, and the
yeah.
reason they use monkeys in those movies is because of that's if they're going to test a virus or a cure for a virus, or a bacterial infection or a fungus or anything like that. This is what they use.
Mm-hmm.
But if you do a search in usaspending.gov for just just that word, RHESUS, rhesus monkeys, that will, like I said, you will be amazed how many different organizations within the government, within the bureaucracy, are spending on them. Outbreak's another one that was
Mm-hmm.
very much like every movie like that, right? 28 days.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yep. Like all of them you'll find, and I believe it was monkeys in The Stand too. They weren't released. But the experimentation was being done on monkeys there as well. So yeah, and do you remember the theory on how HIV got started?
Yeah, we're told it happened in the wild because a chimp started eating monkeys or fucking monkeys, maybe. But yeah,
Yep.
in the wild. Yeah, sure, guys. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
definitely
monkeys.
another one of your laboratory experiments or some shit.
Yep.
And that begs the question of why Fauci was so involved with AIDS and HIV way back in the 80s.
Yep.
And hasn't history just repeated itself? And here
Yep.
we are again. I'm telling you, any a conspiracy theory is only a conspiracy until it's proven true. And I I can't, I am losing fingers counting how many times that
Yeah.
the things that I thought were, just, oh no, it can't be. Oh no, no,
Yep.
nope. It's actually true. These people do not want you around. They don't want us around. They
Yep.
are using us.
It's not a conspiracy theory anymore. It's just a conspiracy.
Yeah, it's a conspiracy fact.
Yep. So yeah, just that's like I said, go down that rabbit hole sometime. You'll be shocked. But yeah, so they're bringing in foreign actors to undermine your vote.
Whether that's on tackling corruption or how to respond to corruption, mobilizing around corruption.
Notice if you label a democratic election result corruption, it suddenly becomes okay to undermine our democracy.
Mm.
Our democracy is not as important as their goals, guys. Like, their democracy is important. Your democracy is not. You see how that works?
I'm losing count of how many times I have to remind people that we live in a republic and not a democracy,
Yeah.
and what the difference is between the two, because people just do not understand the difference, and it just
What
And
people should understand, though, is that there was an election. We got a president elected. There was, this was actually a really safe election, as opposed to the previous election that they told us was safe. This election involved actual ensuring that people whose votes were cast actually existed, were alive, and were citizens that were supposed to be voting. And so the president that we got was a result of the process acting the way that it was intended to act, the process playing out the way it was intended to play out. And these people are mad because you didn't give them the result that they wanted. When they say our democracy, that is their dog whistle for our control over the election process.
Yep.
Not for democracy. They are not talking about democracy.
Yeah, it's not a democracy or a republic. Democracy means rule by the people. Republic means rule by law. We are ruled by people who do not have to follow the law and do not give a flying fuck what the people want.
We're supposed to be a democratic republic, but they've removed both of those factors.
Yeah.
I guess it's an oligarchy, but which means ruled by a small group of people, but nobody knows who that small group of people is. They are necessarily behind the scenes. And I know that sounds like a conspiracy theory, but I mean, what else is there? It's clearly not a monarchy. There are no monarchies.
I don't know. They have a meeting every year and they televise it and they all dress like space aliens. Like, I'm serious. The World Economic... Have you seen the way some of those people dress going to the World Economic Forum meetings? And those guys do run the world. Unless there's somebody pulling their strings.
Yeah, there's a cabal behind the cabal. There always is.
There's somebody pulling their strings. That somebody isn't from this planet. I hate to say that, but these are the richest people in the world, the people with the most money, the people with the most strings that they're holding the ends of, that are attached to institutions like banks and governments and militaries and the businesses that control things like travel and having a place to live and stuff like that. These are the people whose, the strings that have the most pull on those agencies and organizations and institutions are in the hands of the people that attend the World Economic Forum.
Yep.
That's who's running the world. They're not secret. They not only are not secret, but they are comically tone deaf and make themselves look as much like Dr. Evil came from the planet Mars as humanly possible, while discussing how they're going to force you to change everything about your life so they can make more money, harvest more money from your existence.
Yeah. Now, when you asked that question, the World Economic Forum was not the first thing that came to my mind. The first thing that came to my mind was the Bilderberg Group. So I don't know if I'm thinking differently. I mean, obviously
they are
they're
the same people.
One and the same. Yeah.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Yeah, they are the same people. And there's all kinds of videos you can watch on YouTube and on Rumble, where people and actually even on TikTok, where people just go through and draw the connections between companies like BlackRock and individuals within the World Economic Forum, the various banks in the world, and the various governments in the world, and how much of everything is owned by these companies and certain families. And when it really comes down to it, it is a tiny handful of individuals with a lot of money who have made it their multi-generational mission to retain that level of influence in the world.
Yeah.
And to make sort of a royalty of themselves. So, it's not like people will call it a conspiracy theory, but they're doing it in public. It's not a secret. It's not a conspiracy. Yeah. It's just them engaging in business in public where you can see them, and you just haven't been paying attention public-wise. Like people just haven't been paying attention. It's like living, I don't know, living in a world where there's a laser beam that goes out to everybody's minds and controls everything they do and say, and you're conscious of it. The laser is there, you can see it, But since it's everywhere, you tune it out and you forget that it exists. And so when you're making your choices and you wonder why you can't make your own decisions, it never occurs to you that that laser beam that's beaming control into your head is responsible. Except instead of a laser beam, it's money, it's currency, and credit, and it's controlled. Those strings, that laser beam, is controlled by that tiny little group of people. It doesn't come from a tower. It comes from a dynasty that's been that's existed for a long time, and it's not even you can't even really associate it with a demographic, a widespread demographic of people, because they don't give a fuck about their own demographic either. Just their individual family. So, but yeah, going on with this, we will see the rest of what she's got to say here, but it just, that reframing, like I was talking about, that compartmentalization, we don't like what they're doing, so even though it's not illegal, it's not unethical, it's not immoral, they've identified money laundering taking place and the exploitation of specifically this government agency as a means of laundering money instead of helping people, but they label it corruption to put a stop to it. Like that, you stopping you from stealing from the American people in order to line your own pockets, right, is corruption. If you're the one lining your pockets, your own pockets.
Yeah.
Right? That's the type of framing. And it's like I said, people do this naturally. When I was in my 20s, no, I was about 30. My mom was watching my son and I was at work. And I get this phone call at work. Please tell your son that he has to have other nutrition besides the antioxidants that are in chocolate. He'd overheard. I had this conversation with my mom. I hate wine. I don't like to drink it. It tastes nasty to me. It tastes like grape juice that went bad or whatever flavor of juice, right? So I don't drink it.
Basically what it is.
Right. But my doctor was like, well, it's good for your heart to get, it's something in wine. And so I started like researching, like, do I really have to drink wine to get this? Can I get this from somewhere else? Turns out you can just eat grapes and get it. You don't, or drink grape juice, the no sugar added variety, and get it. And it's also in dark chocolate. So if you eat unsweet dark chocolate, which I like, not very many people do because it's kind of bitter. It's like drinking black coffee, but it's black chocolate basically. So I was talking to Mom about that. I'm like, here's the other sources for this. I can get this from these sources. I don't have to buy wine. I don't have to drink wine. I'm good. Right. And I didn't even think about a 5-year-old picking up on that conversation. A few days later, he argued with his grandmother that he should eat his Reese's cups before he eats his lunch because they're good for his heart and he might not have room for them if he ate his lunch first.
Did you say Reese's?
Reese's. Not Reese's the same spelling.
Pieces.
Yeah.
No, but I'm starting to wonder now how they make Reese's Pieces.
Well, it's a last name. Reese is a last name.
You say that now.
Hey, I'm in America. Nutter is a last name. I drive past an arena here in my part of Dayton, going to and from between my place and my daughter's place on a regular basis, that is literally called the Nutter Center.
Jesus.
Everybody from the UK, have a good laugh for a minute. That's called that because the individuals with the last name Nutter donated quite a bit of money to believe that's Wright State University that owns the Nutter Center. So it's still funny because I know that where we would call someone a nutcase in the UK, they'd be called a nutter.
A nutter, yeah.
So if you ever come to Dayton, I'll have to show you where the Nutter Center is. It's huge. uh, for being, it's clearly not a mental health facility. But you can go there. Like, it's big enough that inside the arena there, I've actually watched. I want to say it was in there. It might have been another one of the. We've got a few around here. It might have been Hobart, which is I think gone. But monster trucks. We watched monster trucks inside the arena. So, but yeah. So this individual, this group of people that has reframed this stuff in their mind, just like my son, I want to eat the candy first. Well, it's healthy, so I should eat it first, right? We do that naturally. That's a natural human behavior that, as you mature into adulthood, you learn to go, now, wait a minute. Am I really being wise when I say I should eat my candy first just because it has this one nutrient and not my vegetables or my, meat? I'm sure I'm going to have room for dessert after. But even if I don't, I can always have it later for a snack. Am I really being rational about this? You can check yourself a little bit. Or if somebody else checks you, you have this capability of going, well, okay, that's a good argument. I'll rethink that. But when you wallow, when you isolate yourself and insulate yourself within a community of people that you all speak the same false framing language, and you all have these ideas that, when you take what's normally ethical versus unethical, such as telling people that you are using the money that you have taken from them through threat of force, that it's going for something serving their interests, and therefore they should be okay with that, and then you use it for something else instead. Right? That's unethical. Anybody could normally recognize that that's unethical. But if you spend your whole life reframing in your mind that, well, it's for the greater good. Right? It's important that we do these things. We're the good guys. You can create a mentality where you can justify just about anything. Yeah. And that's how they end up in this situation where they call oversight to end misappropriation of funds and money laundering, corruption. But they don't consider the misappropriation and the money laundering to be corruption because it makes them money.
We can bring those folks in and kind of be those facilitators. And so, again, I think those coordination structures are just starting to take place. And, Walt, I think coordination is happening. I think we're still in the figuring that out phase. But I do think, 22nd Century will be a great place to build those connections. I know John Hopkins is also working to bridge international domestic democracy, conflict mitigation spaces. And to Hochul's point, actually just bringing in, we don't have to be intermediaries either. We can bring in actors or colleagues from around the world who have dealt with this directly, very specific issue sets.
It hits differently after, you hear all that and then you hear that again, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It becomes a little scary. They're organizing internationally to undermine oversight of their agency because they consider ending their money laundering and their misappropriation of funds to be corruption and authoritarianism. So men voted for a man to go in and clean up the government, to clean the misappropriation, the money laundering, the use of your money against you in various ways out of the federal government. And these people organized internationally with communist organizations around the world, and in particular with George Soros money, to undermine that oversight, to create a soft coup against the servant that you voted for to go in and clean up their mess. They justify the international aspect by claiming that the authoritarians are already globally networked, says Data Republican.
International side, certainly our USAID community has very close relationships with locals across the entire world and have worked globally on global trends, global authoritarianism. This movement right now, we're very much framing it as an anti-authoritarian movement in the US. But
notice that she admitted that they're framing it as anti-authoritarian in the US.
Mm-hmm.
So just for the listeners, I want you to think about something. What is more authoritarian? Right? If there's an agency that comes along and against your will, under threat of force, takes money, skims money off of every paycheck you earn and sends it to people in foreign countries under the pretense of helping starving children that they're not actually helping. And then they do things that you maybe don't approve, and things that the people in those countries don't want, like promoting gender critical feminism or intersectional feminism. Or if you retain the right to keep that money and decide to look at organizations that you might think deserve some funding and give it to those that have a good track record for serving the purposes that you would want them to serve, if you're funding them, like maybe purchasing canned goods for a food bank, or giving money to an organization that funds prostate cancer research, or giving it to an organization that has been subject to international oversight and is proven to actually give food to starving people or assist starving people in growing their own food in foreign countries. Like, which is more authoritarian? If you have the power to decide what you're going to do, or these people decide what you're going to do?
I don't think we need to fuck around with fruity Latin words like authoritarian. These people are thieves and liars and frauds and traitors. Good, strong Germanic words that we already have for these fucking charlatans. Well, there's a Latin root word as well. But whatever. Like, there's all kinds of words we can use for such people. But authoritarian is fine as well. They're bastards. I mean, I don't know why we would steer away from the swear words. They're cunts. They're shits. And all that.
It's quite interesting. They're literally reframing by projection. Right? These people that want to engage in oversight and tell us, no, we can't just engage in authoritarian money grabbing. They're the authoritarians. It blows your mind when you really think about what their false framing. But you're right. They are thieves. They are fraudsters. And they're not just thieves that like sneak into your house when you're not home and take money out of your sock drawer or wherever, you keep it. And I don't even have a sock drawer actually. But that's okay because I don't have any money to put in it either. But yeah, they take something and then leave when you're not there and you're not any. These are highway robbers, right? These are the people holding up your vehicle at gunpoint, hijacking the vehicle, throwing your child out at 50 miles an hour, and taking your wallet in the process. And they're calling it authoritarian. That as a nation, we voted for a cleanup guy to go in and engage in some oversight and put the kibosh to their thievery. And this is how they're reframing it. Oh, he's the authoritarian. He's stopping us from stealing from the people.
But depending, the authoritarians are networked globally, and this has our movement, our very movement that we're talking about right now, has the potential to ultimately be a global anti-authoritarian movement given our networks. I also want to talk to the international side. Certainly our USAID community.
That was the end of it. So they're basically their excuse, right? Like she said, is that the authoritarians are global, so we have to be global too. This is literally a false framing of epic proportions. We, the thieves, are anti-authoritarians, and the authoritarians that are stopping us from taxing the people to line our own pockets. They're calling Robin Hood an authoritarian. This is the sheriff of Nottingham calling Robin Hood an authoritarian, reframing Robin Hood as an authoritarian in order to enact a soft coup because we elected Robin Hood president, essentially.
I mean, I resent that metaphor. Robin Hood was a communist. Robin Hood was a proto-communist. You can't just steal from the rich and give to the poor.
You might have been, but he didn't steal from the rich. He stole from the king, and what he stole from the king was taxes that were taken from the people.
Should have just abolished taxes.
Yep.
Like, where was that legendary hero?
That legendary hero is
that princess
never
going to
get elected for president because people are never going to be okay with the idea that they can't take out of their neighbor's pocket to get their goals met. I wish I could have some optimism there, because if somebody came along and I knew for an undeniable fact that they were going to completely eliminate the income tax, like Trump has said he wants to do that, I'm not holding my breath, right? But if I knew for an absolute fact that if candidate X, Joe the anti-authoritarian, Joe the IRS hater, right? If I knew that guy running for office was going to successfully eliminate the entire income tax system at the federal level in the United States, I would vote for him no matter what other policies he wanted to enact.
Yeah.
Just to get rid of that, because it would be so. Yeah, ANCAP Joe. There you go, Joe the ANCAP. Well, Joe the ANCAP might eliminate the entire government. I wouldn't be opposed to that either. So,
Yeah.
but
Same.
let the states each have their own military, and they communicate through like a central hub that you don't even really need a government for that now because we have internet capability. So yeah, that I'd be all for it. But of course, that's most people would not. Like, that'd be the last time you'd get to vote too, because once they dismantle the government, there'd be nothing to vote for. But then again, some people might there might be enough people that would go for it. But yeah, here's part of the pay dirt here.
The foment of the current constitutional crisis is our opportunity to catalyze and synergize a dynamic change making fractal ecosystems capable of co-generating the emergence of the new thriving together.
So, in their language, what she just said, let me go back over that again. All right. Because that was, I know it sounded like a bunch of buzzword gobbledygook, right? That was
I
some
was going to say this motherfucker's giving me
least,
Michael Eric Dyson vibes, and
yeah, at least give us some buzzword garlic bread to go with that, right? That's
right.
Yes, Mr. 303 said it. Obfuscating language. Right?
Mm-hmm.
When I wanted to cuss a guy out in the hallway at school because some dumb shit he said to me, and I knew my dad worked at that school. He was a teacher at that school. And I knew that I would get in trouble first at school and then at home. And then I'd have to hear about it at the family Christmas because 2 of my aunts were teachers and my uncle was a principal, retired at that point. Instead of saying, fuck you, and the horse you rode in on, you bleeding hemorrhoid, I said, fornication upon you, and upon your equine transportation to this location, you bleeding inflammatory wound upon the fundament. And he looked at me, and he looked around, and one guy laughed. He understood exactly what I said, and everybody else was kind of like, blink, 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 blinkety, blink, blink. Oh! Except only one person knew what the fundament was, and that's an old archaic medical term for the anal sphincter, which is why a bleeding inflammatory wound upon the fundament is a hemorrhoid. Obfuscating language. So their obfuscating language here basically says that they are going to use the situation to undermine how the government works by creating little sub-economies that can act independently of the government and force people's behavioral decisions on the basis of not having access to that little sub-economy. So if, in other words, kind of like back in the day when a group from a particular country, an ethnic group from a particular country would all run. Even now that still happens. But for instance, and this is a story that a guy I dated in college told me. He had a colleague in the military who somebody played a prank on him. You had to have your uniform, steam pressed periodically. And locally, all of the laundries that did that service were owned by people of the same ethnicity, and they all knew each other. They probably all lived in the same general area because it used to be very common for entire neighborhoods to just all be one minority ethnicity. That's where they could get houses. And somewhat that was manipulated by banks. They wouldn't loan you money to buy a house in a neighborhood where it wasn't your cultural center, but they would in this or that particular area. And but part of it was people are just more comfortable around people who have the same cultural traditions and understand like the same religious belief systems and the same practices and the same festivals and so on, right? So there's like a two-pronged, this is how people were kept in groups. So this guy is told to say something to them in their language, and he doesn't find out what it means before he says it. And it's a horrible insult that harkens back to some incident that or practice actually that was done against them in a war that was it was particularly hated practice, and so the insult was it was really compounded. And the guy ended up having to go outside of his community after that to get his uniform pressed because none of them would serve him. And like, so in other words, you can, by creating a little sub-economy, control what people can buy in certain areas, right? And you can do this. This is social credit back in the day. You can do this with groceries. You can do this with cars. You can do this with farm equipment. Heck, farmers, you don't, if you look at family farms, they don't all own a combine and a harvester and, a wheel rake and every little thing every giant thing really, because a lot of that equipment is huge. But every machine costs as much as a house. Not every single one, but many of them do. And so one farmer in a co-op might buy one of those machines, and he's paying on a loan that's similar to a mortgage, and another one has a different one, and they contract with each other to rent out those machines to each other, and that way they can all do their work. And similarly, they will do the same thing with breeding animals and so on. So these sub-economies, if you get excluded from that, you can't make money or even buy goods in that particular sub-economy, in that area. You can, if you get excluded from a sub-economy that is essential to your well-being, you might as well pack up and leave where you are because you can't survive there. So what they're talking about creating is essentially ways of forcing people to comply with their interests by controlling what they have access to if they don't comply. And yeah, Mr. 303, that was a really malicious prank that the guy played. Some people don't understand the difference between funny and being an absolute dick to someone. And so when you get into jobs that just use people for cannon fodder, and you don't have to be a genius to be cannon fodder, then you run into more of those people that play those types of pranks.
The foment of the current constitutional crisis is our...
So the foment of the current constitutional crisis, what she's saying there is, we don't like the current administration. So we're going to label it as if it's an emergency. That this is something terrible that has happened to us. Someone with different ideas than we believe in is in charge right now. Constitutional crisis. Oh my God.
It's a crisis, but it is constitutional.
Yes, it is constitutional. The people have spoken. How dare they?
So we have to somehow undo the Constitution like we do all the fucking time. Rip the First Amendment.
Yeah.
Is our opportunity to catalyze and synergize a dynamic change making.
So it's our opportunity, because everything's an opportunity, right? So the people have spoken. How dare they? This is our opportunity to make changes that will allow us to more easily clamp down on them.
A dynamic change, making fractal ecosystems.
Fractal ecosystems would be those little sub-economies, right? Where if you say the wrong sentence in a particular language, you can't get your uniform pressed unless you go to the next county over.
Capable of co-generating the emergence of the new thriving together.
In other words, we are going to force people to comply. That's what she said there.
Based socio-political economic governance systems.
Socio-political economic government systems. Sub-economies that can be used through policies of exclusion to manipulate people into compliance, into doing what we want. That's what she's saying. Go on, Mike.
Based. It's not based, it's cringe.
It is incredibly cringe.
That is a long sentence.
No shit, Sherlock. What the fuck? It's bad when they recognize that their own gobbledygook is gobbledygook. Right? And so, what she just described is what happens when feminine relational aggression meets government policy. Also known as social credit. And, to me, like there's two layers to the whole social credit thing. I look at it from the perspective of an ANCAP who doesn't want to be micromanaged, because I don't think that anybody has the right to do that. And the social credit system, when they combine it with a digital ID, will make it so that you have to comply with the social credit system, because they will be able to use something akin to the sub-economy system to cut off your food supply. You don't buy the right thing, you say the wrong thing, you live in the wrong place, you associate with the wrong people. You suggest, for instance, that if something is a human right, that's everybody's right, not just for women, then suddenly you can't buy tomatoes or go to the doctor. Your car will be remotely shut off because they can do that now. Especially if you've got a much newer model, they can just remotely shut off your car. Everybody who's not driving old junkers that don't have that system installed in it. You can't get on the bus. Right? You can't pay your rent. You can't get electricity to run your heater or gas to run your heater. You said the wrong thing. You said that men are human. How dare you? Right? That's a social credit system. The other end of it is there's a prediction that I've known about since I was a little kid, because I was fascinated with the book in which it was written, that someday an entity will come along and create a system wherein if you do not comply with that system, with the requirements of that system, you cannot buy and sell anywhere. You can't do business at all. And it's in the book of Revelations. So that's a scary thing at the other end, not the earthly end. Definitely something that creeps me the fuck out. Right? But that's what these people are talking about, is finding a way to install from the bottom up a social credit system that they can use to force you to comply, because they don't like that you voted for somebody to come in and clean up their corrupt mess. They don't like facing the oversight.
These people have killed a lot of words through overuse and through association with the process of allowing pathetic, useless mutant pig people to drag successful people into their swamp. They killed the word woke fairly recently. Before that, they killed the word progressive. Like these are usable words that can refer to things, but now they're just impossibly corrupted. And they've even done it with the word social. Like, if we ever do pull ourselves out of the other end of this black hole, having finally somehow escaped it, I don't know if we're ever going to be able to use the word social ever again, given its association with socialism and social justice warrior and all this bullshit. It is applicable in some way. You can socialize with people, but we might have to just revert back to calling it familiarize. You can familiarize yourself with people. That's almost a synonym of socializing, but it works better because it's anathema to everything that socialists stand for. Because you may have noticed that socialists hate the family. And yes, family, familiar, they're the same word. There's nothing socialists hate more than the familiar. They want to abolish the familiar in favor of the xeno, of the stranger, of bringing in that which was not there, for the sake of it being new. It's novelty for the sake of novelty, different for the sake of different. And I don't know if we're ever going to be able to get that stink off of the word social, but we might have to do that. I'm a word nerd, so I see everything in terms of how we phrase things. But it really does start with that sort of shit, and maybe even end with that sort of shit. It's so ironic because the most, again, this is one of those Orwellian ironies. There's nothing more antisocial than socialism.
Yeah.
It's nothing breaks up society more than socialism. And I like this. It's become so muddy and so unusable that I can only see a future in which we just eschew this whole concept of social from our language, because we have, like I said, we have other words we can use, more appropriate words, and like I don't see how we come back from this other than turning social into a fucking curse word, frankly, because that's what it's been
honestly, it's more about concepts than words. And
yeah,
the most important concepts are the boundaries between things like government authority, which, like I said, in my opinion, it shouldn't exist at all. But if it's going to exist, there needs to be set boundaries between that authority and your bodily autonomy, your human rights. And like we did a show years ago, like 2 or 3 years ago, maybe longer actually. It might have been during the first Trump administration. And it was in response to the Women's March. We did a whole series on their manifesto on their page, and one of the things that they had gone on about was civic involvement. And I explained what human rights are and what civil rights are in terms of like, what does that mean the government has to respect, or what does that mean kind of legally? What does it define a human? What is a human right? And what is a civil right? And human rights essentially draw the line between your autonomy and that of the next person, your ability to act, and what happens to the next person and their ability to act, and what happens to you, and in terms of government, what the government may or may not do to you. And your civil rights are essentially how that's laid out in law, how the law of your land describes the boundaries that the government has between itself and your human rights. Our government in the United States, and the Canadian government as well, have been inching over people's human rights a little bit at a time for the last 150 years in the name of the greater good. People think that, well, you can just be above all this if you homestead, for instance, or you go out west and live in Arizona in an adobe hut, have some of your own animals, hunt, fish, whatever. Like I don't know, fishing in Arizona is probably not going to be very easy, but someplace where there's wildlife, someplace where there's water, collect your own water instead of getting it from the city. Create devices to make your own electricity and all that. And I've read news stories where the federal government has gone in and eliminated entire chicken farms because they think the chickens might have bird flu. They don't test them for it. They just go in and kill them. And there's an ostrich farm that made news a while back in Canada that happened with. It doesn't matter what state you live in or what province you live in. If your federal government is doing it, they go into every state. They go into every province. There's been situations where there's various ailments that they want to be careful your cattle don't have this ailment or that because it's dangerous for people to eat it if they have it, right? And there was a hearing. The government literally stopped a woman from testing her cattle to make sure that they were healthy. Because if she was testing her cattle to make sure that they were healthy, then other ranchers that weren't would look bad because they weren't doing it. And then also she would have evidence against an authoritarian push to get rid of her cattle on the basis of, we think they might have this ailment, but we're not going to test them. Just to be on the safe side, we're going to kill them all and we're not going to reimburse you. And they've done that to numerous farmers, ranchers, homesteaders. They have used eminent domain to take land and then not do anything with it. They've used eminent domain to take land and give it to private corporations. They've gone after people for collecting, cleaning, and using their own water, for even just for gray water, like doing your dishes and cleaning your laundry. They have gone after people for having off-grid electricity and not using electricity. And so if you think you can go off-grid and avoid this, the answer is you can't, because they will come and they will take your shit and force you to be on grid until you become homeless from non-compliance, which in China has happened to a huge portion of their population. They have the same homeless problem in China that they have in California, where there's people just living on the street, tent cities and such. Not because they're not doing anything about it, but because they have made so many people homeless through their social credit system that there's no place else for these people to go. They can't displace them without doing something like putting them in camps, which may be the next step. They do have those. There's, in fact, you should look into how the products that they sell on Temu get made.
This is why, as much as I support MGTOW, it is not the be-all and end-all. It is not the only answer. You may think you can go your own way and get off the grid, but we're far too far gone for that.
We're in a system at this point where government authority and government overreach are so all-encompassing that if you go off the grid will come after you.
You know why men can't go their own way? Because they don't have any rights. And that's why MGTOW and men's rights advocates need each other. Yep. as different elements in the same movement, dare I say. I know they say MGTOW's not a movement, but the active verb is go, so I would hope it is a movement. At least it's part of the movement. We need to go our own way and advocate for our own rights at the same time. Because only with this pincer movement can we actually undo this fucking nightmare. Best of luck, everyone.
Yeah. That's the other thing. Like, we are able to do what we can do right now because it hasn't gone too far just yet. But if the government decided that they were going to stop us, we don't have the power to keep them from doing that. And like a case in point, the Bundy bunch, right? Xeranx brings up, what would Clive and Bundy do? And it's the question isn't what would Clive and Bundy do. The question is, why did it work when it worked? And why won't it work in the future if it is decided that they're going to force you into 15-minute cities and so on? And the answer is this. In order for them to be able to force you into that, they have to have enough power over enough people that they can't protest against it. They can't march in the streets. They can't take their weapons and go attack the Capitol. They can't do what people were accused of in 2020. Much less put the absolute kibosh to it, right? They can't even do what people did in 2020, which was pretty much ineffectual protesting. It achieved very little. And so when it gets to that point, the thing that stopped the government from just wholesale running over the Bundy bunch at the Bundy Ranch was they cared enough about optics to not perpetrate another Ruby Ridge. But they'll get to the point where they don't give a flying fuck about optics because there's nothing that you can do in response to it. When they get to that point, someone like Clive and Bundy stands up to them. They will just mow down every living person on that land and do what they want with it anyway. And that is why we are needed. That is why this is so insidious, what we're looking at. That a government agency, the people that work for that agency, rather than following policy that is oversight, rather than obeying the will of the people, ceasing to steal from us to line their own pockets, they're organizing with militant groups, militant communist groups around the world to try to undermine the cleanup of our government, the prevention of what I'm warning about. They're afraid they won't be able to achieve it. When men put their minds to it and they decide to support somebody in tearing down the scaffolding underneath that exploitative system, they scare the fuck out of the women who are stealing from them. And that's why, like this, you can see men in the call, right? But the people doing the talking, did you notice? I didn't hear a man's voice the whole time. Did you?
Nope.
And
Now we have one guy here.
Of the current constitutional crisis
nope, still her.
is our opportunity.
Yep. So this is what we're dealing with, right? This is here. She wants us to watch a video. I'm not going over this. This is 6 minutes long, and it's time for us to end the show tonight. But if you're on X and you're not following Data Republican, you should start following Data Republican, because this is something you should be keeping track of. It may not seem like a men's issue, but it is a men's issue in the same way that the evolution of the parliamentary system and voting rights was a men's issue. It's men who step up and put the stop to this. It's men who voted a man into office to clean up the government after decades of women voting men into office to give them gibs so that they could exploit the government. This is a situation where women aren't going to step up and fight against this, even though you're hearing about it from one. Most women won't even fully understand what's wrong with it. They'll be going along with it. So men, it's up to you. Stay abreast of this. No, pun intended. And watch what they're doing, and make sure that you alter what you're doing accordingly, especially when you go to the polling booth. You pay attention to everything these people say and what politicians say about them and about what they're doing. Who's willing to stand up and actually do something about this behavior? Who's willing to hold them accountable versus who says it's a distraction? Because you want to know who's going to fight in your corner to put a stop to this, and who is just going to ignore it because they're doing the same thing some other way. But with that, I will thank you all for listening, and I would encourage you to find this thread and continue, because there is quite a lot here. And I'm not going to go over every tweet in this thread, but I do think that it is very important that you're aware of it and that you follow up on it and recognize that your government, the bureaucracy underneath your government, is fighting against the authority of the public over the government. In doing this, your authority is being undermined, and you definitely need to be active in fighting back against that. And in terms of, if you want to see changes in federal governments and world governments, you're going to have to start locally. But I would encourage men in the men's rights movement to start getting involved on the civic level in your community. Run for city council, run for dog catcher if you have to, county commissioner, school board. If you are the least bit inclined to get involved like that, do it. Get involved and start being one of the people who influences where your political party goes locally. The more men in the men's rights movement that do that, the more you're able to influence state level elections and federal level elections. And yeah, Mr. 303 pointed out ICE is hiring.
Mm-hmm.
So it's another one of those dangerous jobs, though. But
teach women. I know that's a weird couple of words that we don't hear very often, because men don't get to be teachers or parents. But in the event that you do teach women, you don't need to program them into anything. If anything, you need to deprogram them. But you'll have a hard time deprogramming them, because so many of them have been so programmed that they can't be deprogrammed. But there's another generation coming up, and see if that generation can be raised without the programming that has so corrupted the last fucking 5 generations of them. Help to teach women to just be fucking normal, to not be programmed in the first place into this insane cult. And you can do that by being a parent or by being a teacher or by being an internet influencer, whatever the fucking word is for whatever it is we're doing here.
I don't know if they call us influencers or not.
No, that's the
I don't like the label.
No, neither do I. That's an Instagram word, but just fucking talk to women.
Well, be careful how you talk to women, because you don't want to get you don't want to give the woman a power to cost you your job.
But I'm just saying.
This is why I say men getting involved. It's hard to put this on men to teach women, because adult women have they've got a bubble wrap kind of shield around them that they can use to stop you from teaching them. They can go. They don't even have to work at your job to go after you. Just don't forget Donglegate. All they have to do is get mad at you and say that you did something misogynistic, and even if you're not their colleague, not their coworker, they can still get you fired. All they have to do is get an outrage mob going, or contact your employer and say, your employee did X, Y, Z, and I am deeply offended. So guys need to take control of their local governments. Really, this is why I say I want to see more men in the men's rights movement getting involved in civics. Not because it's not just because it's a duty of American citizens, but because we need to put masculinity back and into this, and because you can't change women. You can only change what authority is doing. Women are going to have to change themselves. And I'm sorry, but you can't trust that you're going to be able to change them. Now, your daughters, fathers out there, definitely teach your daughters to be better than the current generation of women.
That's what I mean.
But not adults. Don't try. Not saying that you don't try to talk to your friends about this stuff, but you can't trust that you can talk to adult women that you don't have a really good, close relationship with about this stuff.
Oh God, no, they're broken. Don't bother with the ones who are already broken. I'm just trying to push back on, because from the left and the right, I hear all we can do is tell men what to do and teach men to be more blah, 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 and all that shit.
Yeah.
And I'm like, all right, yeah, maybe, but I'm here to say, women can be teachable, maybe from an early age.
You have to start at an early age, or you have to be female to do it.
Maybe from a certain angle, but we're not going to change anything if all we do is keep nagging men to do shit.
Well, the biggest thing is that women, and particularly young women, and teenage girls, need not necessarily a female version of Jordan Peterson, but a female version of what Jordan Peterson started out to be. They need somebody to get through to them that they can be happier and healthier if they make wiser decisions. And rather than taking the easy road or the emotionally uncontrolled road and the intellectually lazy road, that if they challenge themselves to consider all of the potential consequences of their choices before doing things like screwing around like a $3 hoe, for instance, that their lives, the trajectory of their lives will be at a higher level of ease and not just leisure, but just not having to deal with stupid shit happening to them because they did stupid shit. They won't get the stupid prizes because they won't play the stupid games. And right now, we have population-wide a female mentality of, I have the right to play stupid games, and you have to deal with the stupid prizes. It's not my fault the prize is stupid. It's your fault the prize is stupid. I don't have to deal with that. That needs women talking to women to change that. Because if the people that they are trying to dump the stupid prizes on are the ones that are objecting, the result is just going to be women saying, well, you just don't want to take responsibility. And you don't want to take responsibility because it's responsibility for their choices. But they won't see it that way. They'll see it as, I got to talk to this guy's boss and get him fired so he knows that he can't do that. I hate to say it, but that's unfortunately true of women as a population, left and right, up and down, traditionalist and feminist, and even some in the men's rights movement. I've run into them, had knockdown, drag out fights with them and been unfollowed, blocked, even had them leverage their social pull against me by turning some of the guys in the men's rights movement against me for criticizing another woman in the movement. Oh, you're going to scare her away. If accountability scares her away, she was never really here to begin with. But yeah, you can teach your daughters because you are their fathers, right? But you can't teach your neighbors. You need to shield yourself from the consequences of their outrage. The only way to do that is to kind of do the same thing that you do with, you can't stop your neighbor from committing, stupid crimes and stuff like that either. You can't really engage in violence to protect your neighbors from your other neighbors. You have to call the cops. So I guess you can think of the women of the movement as the equivalent. It's going to be up to us. And I hate to make people helpless in any way, shape, or form on any level for any reason. But the reality is that's the way this situation is.
Create strong men. Strong men create good times, and weak women create bad times. I'm sticking to that axiom because I sincerely believe it. So all that energy that y'all have been putting into creating weak women over the last century at least, take that energy and put it into creating strong men, one way or another. That's
strong men and strong women.
And strong women too, but strong women support the strong men who create good times. I think that's right. How it works.
Strong women support strong men. Weak women seek to exploit them.
Indeed.
So, with that, though, I am going to end the show. Thank you all for listening. Thanks, Mike and Lauren, for going through this with us. This has been some disturbing content, but I feel like we really had to cover it. And starting next week, we're going to get into some more disturbing content that has nothing to do with UN women. We're taking a break from that because we really have to look at this. And it's a yay, but when you see it, it's not going to be. It's going to upset you. And I'm sorry in advance, but we have to talk about this. And it's a serious issue. People who on both sides of the fight about whether the United States should be involved in the Ukraine-Russia conflict need to see this. My attention was drawn to it by one of my mutuals on X, and I watched it a few days ago, and just thinking about it, I'm enraged. So I want you all to be enraged too. So that's what we're going to do next week. And with that, I will close us out. Thanks, guys.
Word.
Men's rights activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.